Hi, I'm Charles, and I'm a beekeeper that loves old bee equipment. Rot most often occurs on the bottoms of hive boxes, but can occur along the tops as well. This hive box was repaired by me years ago and developed rot along the wall where the frames rest. I call this the shelf wall. Repairing the shelf wall along the top is a little bit more complicated than patching other places on the hive box. Today, I'm going to show you how to do it. To do this kind of repair, you require a circular saw or a table saw, and a jigsaw is also required for the best results. Hello again. You may have noticed I have an uptick in the quantity of videos lately, and part of that is because we are in maintenance season. Pretty much around Christmas time, well into February, that's when I knock out a lot of my maintenance for the coming year. I inventory all the boxes, I see what frames need changed out, I see, where are we having some rot issues, what needs painted. With beekeeping, you want to always be rotating boxes in and out. What do I mean by rotating boxes? Well, I mean, over time, you work the box out of the hive, and a lot of the time the bees will do that for you, because bees are like a fire. They move upward, and in time, usually in fall, the bottom box, they're not really down there. That's a common time that you'll flip boxes. You'll also do it in spring, because they'll be at the top of the hive by then. Those are good times to get some of these boxes out of circulation. The other good time to get them out of circulation is during the honey harvest. It's a lot easier to pull those boxes and then do maintenance on them after the harvest season. Now when we look at this box, what's wrong with it? Well, we have a nasty bit of rot, and we have it in a place I really don't like to work. This is the shelf of the box. What I mean by the shelf is that this is where the frames rest, and that requires a little more work to repair. What other stories does the box tell us here? Well, it definitely tells us that, bees had died in this box before, because it has wax moth scarring. You can see some over here as well. In addition, you can see that I patched this box at some point. This is a patch that I put in 6 years ago. This hive box came from an adventure I had back in 2017. A hunter had spotted an abandoned hive in the woods and reported it to me. The box was in rough shape, but the swarm had moved into it, requiring me to ratchet the hive together at night and bring it back to my home. My friend Andy and I had went out after dusk to get it, and poor Andy made the unfortunate decision of wearing yoga pants. The bees immediately rewarded him with stings when we tilted the hive forward to attach the ratchet straps. The bottom board, which had sank into the mud and impeded the front entrance, it literally disintegrated as we had lifted it up. The bees were going in and out of a crack in the back of the hive where there was a little bit of rot as their entrance. After getting it into my truck, we took it home and set it up in my yard until morning, and that's when I began moving the frames over to fresh boxes. There were fresh queen cells and a queen, so I decided to split the hive in two. I decided that the hive boxes and their issues with rot could be solved with patching. As you can see, there was significant rot along the back of the hive along the bottom. This came from standing water in the hive. That occurs when the hive is tilted backward and there's just no drainage. I cut the rotten portion of the back wall off and applied a patch that was strong and has held for half a decade now. You can also see that the wood filler I put in years ago has begun to fail and expose some of the rot. It's not bad rot, still pretty solid. And I'm probably going to put wood filler here again, but here's my warning about wood filler on boxes. When you put it between boxes and between where parts touch, it doesn't have a lot of great integrity, because they're going to propolis the pieces together, and you may find yourself prying the boxes apart and you'll rip that whole patch off because the propolis is stronger than the wood glue. One error I made is that I only put wood filler on the outside of the box. I didn't do it on the inside. And the inside's very important too, because you really don't want hive beetles having a place to hide in here. So here's our game plan. We're going to deal with this rotten corner. We're going to do a little bit of wood filler on the bottom. And we will do a little bit of filler along the old patch, which is holding strong even after half a decade of use. This box has done well for me, and I think it'll continue for many more years to come. Now, a quick thing to know is understanding joints in general. These, which you'll commonly see on bee boxes, are rabbeted joints. What you want to do, and we did it right here for this patch, is we like to cut just below one of the rabbet joints. That way you can make a piece that holds in there and it gives it more stability. Because if I cut right here and just attach the pieces of wood together, that would be fine, but it's not as sturdy as having that rabbet. And that's what we're probably going to do here. We could cut just below this one, but we might go as low as this. Now, one of my concerns is that we'll bump into the handle, and we don't want that either. So maybe not, but I would really like at least one rabbet in the joint. So we found where we want to start, and we want to start right at the bottom of this rabbet and right at the bottom of this rabbet. And because it's a nice straight line, all we have to do is connect them, and that'll be where we cut. I like to use a Sharpie when I can, because when you're cutting these boxes with the saw, it can be easy to not be able to see that line anymore if you use a pencil. One thing you need to keep cognizant of is that there are nails that go into the sides right here, and you can either pull those out, which can be a pain from this position, or you can burst them, and I was able to burst them with the saw. Taking a sawzall very gently might be your best option there, but we made a significant gap right there, and we're going to cut a little bit more so that we can get the blade in there. Alright, we're going to try to put it on the line right here, get it spinning. That's actually one of the straightest ones I've done with this tool before, and it's because we had it laid down properly. I've done some pretty nasty cuts, and don't worry if you do one too, because you know wood filler can help you most of the time. I know I keep harping on wood filler, but it hides many of life's sins. Now we have to where there is one nail going down here holding it in, and one across. So we're going to cut down and we're going to burst that nail with the saw. Remember to have your safety glasses on. You don't want shards of metal or wood in your eye. It's never pleasing. I felt it there. And there we are. We got it off and got that piece off too. We did a little bit more extra cutting than we wanted, and we got under the rabbet right here, but it's not too deep and we can fix that with wood filler. That's not a big deal. Well, here is our rotten piece, and the shelf is going good, and then it just goes to total crud with rot. Let me see here. We're gonna knock some of the nails out, which is easier from the other side. Now we're getting the nails out. We're gonna lay it down like this and then tap them out. You don't even need to tap them all the way out. That's kind of what I'm doing here, but here we have a nail on the bottom here, and I'm just going to try to tap it out. Better lay it down to tap it out. There we go. I feel it. Well, no, we didn't quite get it. There we go. And we got it. And now that we have it right here, we can just pull it out. Don't even need the handle for that. And that's the piece of the nail that we burst. And now we can put a screw through that hole. We're going to use this board because it's the right thickness. This is a old fence post because scrap lumber works fine. And we're going to cut the larger part of the patch, but we're not going to cut it down to its narrowness yet because it's a lot easier to make a shelf in a big thick piece of wood like this because you can put it inside of a vise and work it. I'd advise you to cut your shelf early. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cut it down to the length we need it. I'm going to mark it right here. A lot of the time you don't even have to measure. You really just have to use what you're working with as a template, and you'll even get the more snug and better fitting cuts doing it that way sometimes. And here we go. A nice straight line. Now, to do a cut for a shelf, this is a very important measurement. You want to find out how deep is the shelf. And in this case, it's a little more than ½ an inch. In fact, it looks to be about 9/16 of an inch. But you know, if we're off by 1/16 of an inch, that's fine. I'm probably going to cut it to half. The reason why you need to know is because you need to be able to take this and put this at a depth of exactly that. That's why a circular saw is very important. Now, if you're with a table saw, you could do even better. But once again, we don't have a table saw here, and a lot of people just don't own one. So we're going to use a circular saw for this, and we're going to set the depth for it. All right, we're going to divide this in half. I messed up with the saw a little bit and tilted it to where it went deeper than it was supposed to. Still redeemable. We're going to do the next cut at the proper depth to cut the shelf out. All right, we're marking it at 1/2 an inch depth. And we'll join the two pieces here. We have a great inside where frames will rest, but you see where I messed up with the saw, there's a little bit of a cut down in here I don't like, and we can do wood filler with that. That's not a big deal. Admittedly, this is difficult to see with the camera, but what we're going to do is we are going to begin cutting the piece, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to get these 2 points flush, and we're going to then trace along the inner part here. Now, you could clamp this in some way, but I like to live dangerously, so I try to prop this up best I can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer we are, the better we are, and the less we have to depend on wood filler. Okay, almost there. Okay, and we have our trace line right there. So we're going to have to cut that out and make that work. Now for some of our more precise cuts, that's where the jigsaw comes in. Always remember, cut away from the cut. There we go. And now for the fun part. Will the patch that we made fit? Yep, yes it does. Now I'd be worried because of a little bit of the gap in here that if I aggressively screw this down I could snap these ends off. We don't want to do that. We want to drill pilot holes, and we want these to be where this attaches first, and we would want to put our wood filler down along here and then kind of smush it together. Now to make some wood filler, we're going to use some sawdust from our sander, but honestly this project produced more than enough sawdust to where we could do it with that. It'd be a little wasteful with it, but It costs next to nothing to make. Buying it in the store, however, that can be a little costly, and honestly, I always don't seal those packages together right, and then it just becomes crud, and it's useless, and it was a waste of money. Yeah, let's mix it up. The consistency we want is peanut butter, and I may find, okay, I need to add more glue for that. Now we're going to do our first bit of wood filler. We're going to sandwich it in between. That way when we push the bottom down, it squeezes the excess out that we can wipe off. It's not how I've done it over the years. A lot of the time I just glue. But I'm finding that, you know, this reduces me having to try to push it in from both sides. So this is kind of becoming my new go-to. If it was cut perfectly and snugly, I wouldn't use wood filler. But that's not the case here. And since I am not a woodworker and I'm using hand tools, and I'm also not very patient, I tell you what, look at that. It looks like a Wendy's Frosty. Now that I put that image in your head, nice. I almost forgot to do our pilot holes. Do pilot holes with wood that is this thin. You still might even split it. But the split won't be as bad. Honestly, whatever you do, just don't jam a screw in there like an inbred orangutan. Be patient. Please, please do pilot holes. Right, now one of the most satisfying parts for me is putting this in, and we're going to get a little bit of squish that tells us that this is full of wood filler. Now there's not as much coming out here, which tells me we need more wood filler there. And that part we can add externally. But that's looking pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with that. So let's put a couple screws in, and we'll secure this in additional ways. There we go. Alright, let's wipe off some of the excess here. There we go. The interior is pretty smooth, and we'll double check it when we flip this box, but I just want to make sure that there's not a significant crack right there or space, because you want water to run off of it, not into that crack, and just slowly wear down the box over time. As we can see, the inner crack looks really good on the patch that we did. Now we're going to turn it around. Here we are. I'm going to patch this again. See how well it holds. It's not a great place to patch a hive, but the truth is we're just really putting some little seal over it that might protect it. Painting it might do just fine, but I'll give it a try again, because it held for the most part for a number of years. It has now been 3 hours and everything's nice and dry. And now the moment of truth. I'm going to flip it over. Now we're going to see, can we fit a frame into it? And frame fits. In fact, it fits perfectly. There's even a tiny bit of wiggle, which it's good to have a little bit extra room, not to where it's falling off the shelf, but to where propolis and other things can build up in there, and it won't keep you from being able to put in the frame. Now remember, this is ideally your time of the year where you will actually want to go through your boxes and find, do I need a new frame? Do I need foundation in this frame? Like this guy is an old guy, but it's still in pretty good shape. It's wax moth scarred, but at some point the edge on these will fail. It's in pretty good shape right now though, but I'm going to tell you a dirty secret. When you buy a nuke from somebody, a nucleus colony, you're usually not getting their best frames. You're getting the ones that they rotate out, and I am just as guilty of that. So count on some of those frames and that 5-frame nuke, things you're going to have to rotate out in a couple years. The last bit I'll leave you with is just to repeat that, this is a 5-year patch, and it is holding very, very strong. The only difference is now I would not use nails with this. I would use screws with it. But this should tell you this will really extend the life of your equipment. I've gotten half a decade of use out of this, and it's ugly, but I'm proud, and frankly, beekeeping is prohibitively expensive. A new box with frames can easily cost you about $50. And just patching up some old equipment that you have and taking care of it, and especially for folks out there that love their particular first hive they got, or a piece of equipment that was gifted to them by somebody special, people that have inherited equipment from either mentors or from parents, this is a good option for you. You don't need to toss it right out. And we began doing this years ago because our garden had no money for our bee yard. I called every club to see what people were throwing out, and I had to adapt woodworking skills and patch these things and make it work. And now we have Maryland's largest community garden bee yard. By keeping our equipment well maintained and sturdy, we turn out well each season. It also reduces your overhead significantly. Like you can see, this has 3 new frames in it because I pulled 3 frames which aren't the best anymore. That they were as rough as this one right here, and those are now going over to nukes to get rotated out because they're still stable enough, and they have drawn comb to set a new hive up for success. So I'll leave you with hive maintenance is important. This is the time of year to do it. Don't wait for when you need these boxes to do hive maintenance on them.